Hello, everyone. Hi, this is Dr. Karen Hardy, and welcome to Flip This Risk podcast, where high achievers share their stories about risk taking. You can check us out at flipthisrisk.tv, and you can follow Flip This Risk podcast on LinkedIn. And world-renowned Egyptologist, documentarian, TV host, director. He has filmed, produced, directed, and been featured in over 100 documentaries and has worked with networks such as the Discovery Channel and the History Channel and National Geographic. You're everywhere. I've watched your shows. They are very intriguing for the most part. Wanted to invite you here to talk about being a high achiever, your relationship with risk taking, and then how that all relates to being an Egyptologist. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's lovely being here. Thank you for having me. You have butchered my name, but I forgive you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will clean up my act for sure. But just for starters, I understand that you were born in Cairo, Egypt. What was that like for you?
Being born in Cairo, Egypt, it wasn't like anything. It was like anyone being born anywhere. At the time you were born, you don't feel like there's anything different. You don't feel like there's anything strange. I loved Egypt. I love Egypt. And I loved being born there. I loved growing up there. It was the best time I can remember. And then I was also born into a documentary making family. So
Mm-hmm.
I was always in the ancient Egyptian ruins, ancient Egyptian sites, the places where no one has been. Any new discovery, I was always there first with my father when I was 6, 7, 10. I loved my life. I couldn't have done any better. When it comes to risk management and being on the Egyptologist side, archaeologist side of my field,
Yeah.
we take risks every day. I mean, every time we take risks passionately too.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we make a new discovery, there's always the risk of not just losing everything, is losing your own life. You discover a new mummy, you open a new tomb, you have to think about all these things that happen to people all the time. The curse of the pharaohs, where
Oh.
people open the tomb for the first time and they end up dead for whatever reason, whether it's spiritual or otherworldly or chemical. It
Oh.
happens all the time, but we don't think of that risk while we're making it, because
Mm.
what comes with that risk, the accomplishment that can come with that risk, is a great discovery that
Mm-hmm.
will completely change the world and completely change history as we know it. Every time we make that discovery, we're hoping for it to be that. That's what Howard
Yeah.
Carter and Lord Carnarvon did. They took risk one
Mm-hmm.
year after the other, and they discovered the tomb of King Tut after 3 years, after running out of money, after running out of finances, after having a lot of their team dying, and
Mm.
Lord Carnarvon himself suffering with disease. They still took the risk and stayed one more month. And that month, they discovered the most important discovery in the history of mankind, the tomb of King Tut.
Wow. So we're a lot closer to our reward than we even think, aren't we?
Yes, the reward is what makes the risk not seem so risky.
Right. I love the way you put that. The reward is what makes the risk not seem as risky. And you just really just flow in that for the most part, right?
Absolutely.
So what draws you to the mysterious? Even though you've grown up in a family, this was just normal business for you all. But what is it that draws you to the mysterious?
Well, if I don't think there is a human being out there that can taste this once and not be completely addicted to that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling when you get squeezed between two ancient rocks, dive all the way down a massive shaft so you could be the first human in this time to experience this new discovery. It is a rush. It is a drug. It is an addiction. So what drives me is sickness. I'm addicted. I'm addicted to discovering a new thing that will change history. I will always do it, and anyone in my place that will taste it once will never stop wanting it.
So have you ever been in a situation where the risk did outweigh the reward, but you did it anyway?
I don't think the risk of death is is uh,
It's worth
is
it.
less than any reward out there.
Yeah,
But I do it every time.
it's not.
But also in my personal life, it has happened multiple times. I have met my wife. Um, I've met my wife in Egypt in 2009, April 2009. She is from here, from Los Angeles, California, uh, and uh, and 4 months into meeting her for the first time, I asked her to marry me.
Wow,
Now that's a risk,
that is a risk.
but 11, 12 years later, and three children, uh, three countries that we moved from one to the other, a revolution, a pandemic, nine
Mhm.
Emmys. We've done
Yeah,
it. We're together,
you've
and
done
we
it.
are in love.
I tell you, isn't that something? That's like two different, I tell the two cities right there. One version of when professionally, how you approach it, and then personally is just the reverse, but you still end up with the reward at the end. Was there anything, some discoveries more fascinating than others for you?
Some discoveries that has been made in history, or are you talking specifically my own discoveries?
A little bit of both. Well, let's talk about your personally, your experiences personally. Have there been some more, uh, fascinating than others for you?
Absolutely, yes. There's a discovery or a story I've been following and tracking, and I did an episode about it on the Discovery Channel show Mummies Unwrapped.
Mm,
It wasn't too far from here. It was about one of the most notorious crimes in American history. It
hmm.
was about it was about President Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth.
Oh, wow.
Um, and we were tracking the mummy of John Wilkes Booth. Apparently, back in the um, early American history, mummies were an attraction, and they went around in carnivals, and people would pay to see it. It was called a dime museum because people would pay a dime to go in and
Wow.
see mummies. So they started mummifying notorious criminals and taking them around in carnivals. And based on our research, one of the mummies that they um, mummified was the mummy of John Wilkes Booth.
Wow.
Now we traced that mummy to try to find it, and there was one massive problem: the mummy.
Hmm.
The age of that mummy when it died was about 20 years older than the age of John Wilkes Booth when he was claimed to have been um, hung by the shot by the government in
Now
a
that's
barn.
now that's fascinating.
Now, it's fascinating not because it's that it could be a mistake, but it's fascinating because if it this mummy was actually John Wilkes Booth's mummy, then John Wilkes Booth was not shot in a barn. Then John Wilkes Booth committed the most aggressive crime in American history and likely got away with it.
Mm.
So we had to use modern technology, today's technology, to try to trace the mummy and try to find if that mummy is actually John Wilkes Booth's mummy or not. And we end up using really brand new technology with face detection that they use today in the police force from CCTV cameras when they find faces that robbed 7-Eleven stores and match them with any faces in the deck of repeated criminals, and we used that technology. We went to an ex-policeman who helped us out, and we put into the database of ex-criminals the photos of John Wilkes Booth, and then we took the photos of the mummy, and the police warned us that it might not work at all because they've never tried a photo of a mummy's face. That we took a photo of the mummy and we put it in a database to see if it's going to match with any of the ex-criminals, including the known photo of John Wilkes Booth. And normally that comes out with a percentage of anywhere from 1% to 100%. Anything above 70%, they have a case and they could take it to court. When we put that picture of that mummy in, it came out as a match to John Wilkes Booth
Wow.
with 97% chance.
That's incredible.
97% chance that John Wilkes Booth killed Abraham Lincoln and got away with it.
Wow. That is fascinating. I mean, is that one of the discoveries where are most of the discoveries that high percentage in terms of validation of certain things? Is that unusual to get that level of percentage in terms of validating something?
Yes, very much, because in discoveries in general, history and everything we know about history, everything we know about archaeology is never 100%. Nothing we know is 100%. Even if it's written on the walls. Remember, at that time, everyone that writes anything on the walls is a king, a queen, a nobleman. So in a way, history that we know of ancient Egypt or any ancient history is the history that the rulers have been telling us. So think about a day like today or in any other country. I don't want to get into politics, but if
Yeah.
all the history that we know is the history that is being told by the president or the rulers of the country, that will be some fake news right there.
There you go. It's very timely. Have you you've already discussed and shared about how risky your field can be. What about when it comes to bouncing back from disappointments? I know that one time I saw one of the shows where, they're looking for to uncover something and it doesn't come out to be what you expect it to be. So how do you bounce back from disappointments?
It is what you apply in your real life, in your personal life, in your business. Disappointments is a part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Without disappointments, you will not enjoy the success. Disappointments is your learning curve. The most I have learned was not from discoveries that were successful. The most I've learned is from the disappointments, is from the failures. I've learned what not to do, which is the only reason I was successful at any other point. So failures and disappointments is my learning platform.
Mm-hmm.
And I greatly appreciate them. Of course, emotionally, they're heartbreaking at the time, but you got to take a moment and think about it and then start defining it and feel how important that failure can be in your future.
It's interesting because a lot of organizations and companies are run by leaders who don't feel comfortable being vulnerable about, what the shortcomings are in the company or what the risks are. They sense that it's a bad thing. And, they have a high risk aversion for the most part. But from what you're
Yeah.
saying is that that's the healthiest part of being successful. You can't have success without having that vulnerability when it comes to taking risks.
Yes, I completely agree. And it's harder with politics, of course, because politics is full of what do you call it? Lies. So you can't actually have any disappointment in politics, but there has to be. There has to be, or else it is a lie. There has to be disappointments. There has to be failures. I don't know a single successful person or a single success story that does not have failure in it. It wouldn't be a success story if it doesn't have failure in it.
I think with what we're going through today with the challenges of the, pandemic and the crisis, a lot of companies are going to have to do some soul searching and really realize that, falling short is not a sign of weakness, but it's the time to pivot, reevaluate, and re-examine where our vulnerabilities are to get stronger. I think that's the message I'm trying to, achieve through the podcast and interviewing folks like yourself.
It is so true. So true.
So, does your work inspire you to be more open, uncover your fears or your aspirations since you're in the business of uncovering things?
It is funny you ask that question because no, it doesn't. I get very brave when I'm trying to discover a new mummy that could produce a new poison or a disease that can kill me. But I get very risk averse when I'm investing my money. So it's one other thing that I could tell you is that not every aspect of my life I have to take risks in, or not every aspect of your life you have to take risks in. You can
Yeah.
decide what part you can take risks in and what other parts you can be risk averse in. And I think that works for me so well. I'm very happy with my very conservative investments, and I'm very
Mhm.
happy with my very risky discoveries, and both of which give me a platform so I can be stable yet take my risks and enjoy them. If I took risks in every side of my life, it will hurt at
It
some
wouldn't
point.
even make sense, would it? So it's a balance. It's like diversification for the most part. You don't have
Exactly.
100% risk, but at the same time, there's no 100% guarantees either, right?
Correct.
Well, hopefully
Diversification of your life.
oh, absolutely. We're trying to convey this message, and we get better at this as we, go further along. So, in terms of what advice would you give someone, though, in terms of what you've learned and what you do as an Egyptologist? What type of advice would you give someone who's not in your field, but in general, career-wise, running an organization, a CEO? What do you think from your lens?
Well, I'm not the advice type guy. I'm not a. I don't lecture people, but since you asked me, I would love to lecture people about things and show them how great I am and how I could teach them things. Um, it has been my life has been a big roller coaster. I have
Hmm.
gone through so many things. I have fled my own home because of revolution. I've made multiple risky discoveries. I've climbed mountains. I've dived deep underwater to find dead bodies. My life is full of risk, and yet I feel very safe. But risk and the reward is extremely important.
Hmm.
Don't take risk because you want to take a risk. You really have to always calculate it. How much will that reward affect you? How much will that reward affect your life? Is it worse? Is it worse? Is it worth losing everything for? And if it was, then do it. I learned from a great mentor. His name is Nido Kubain. I'm sure you
Hmm.
know about Nido. He was telling me about his investment style, and he said, I am willing to risk 100% of my investment because of the reward. And
Hmm.
because I know that worst case scenario, if I lose it all, I can work hard and make it up again, make it back again. And if best case scenario it works out, then I never have to worry again. And that's exactly how you should calculate your risk in life. Can you survive that risk if it hits you? And
That's
is
right.
the reward worth it? And that has worked for me every time. Yes, I do jump from waterfalls, but I do take all the measures necessary to make sure I am definitely safe while I'm doing it. I get all the professionals that I need to make sure that rope that is tying me from my waist is not going to go loose. I
Yeah.
know for a fact that I can trust these guys with my life. And that's how I take risks. I am very safe while I'm taking the biggest risks there are.
I'm hoping that energy and enthusiasm and positivity that you have about risk taking, CEOs, people in my field of risk management can really start to apply some of that and realize, really that's what the basis of a successful organization looks like. It's not running in the opposite direction, but it's embracing it and then bringing other people to the table to share in that risk. So how has that been in terms of, you bringing other people to the table when it comes to making those types of decisions?
Well, the funny thing about the risks I've taken, and everyone will probably feel the same way, is any risk that you've taken that has paid its reward and did not hit you with its deficit, does not seem like too much of a risk now because you've already taken it. But if you look back at your life and look back at anyone that I know, anyone that has been involved with me, look back into your life and see what actual risks you've been taking, and you will find so many risks you've taken. You might not just realize it because you got the reward. And apply that for the rest of your life. There will be risks, and sometimes risks are sometimes opportunities, and
That's
opportunities
right.
are only opportunities when you see them. If you ignore opportunities, if you're trying to ignore risk at all costs, you also might be ignoring opportunities. Um, and the thing is, if you find the opportunity, it will be a risk as always. You just do it with a calculated way, and you'll reap the rewards.
You said something very important in our profession is that, it's not just about risk. It's about, and a lot of people equate risk with loss, right? Not necessarily gain. And it's just not a conversation about risk. It's also a balance with opportunity and risk. You pursue an opportunity, the risk comes with it. So you just have to balance that out. So just wrapping up a little bit, what are some of your projects that you're working on now that you want to tell everybody about?
Well, I have a split life in my professional life. I am an Egyptologist on camera, archaeologist discovering things, and I'm also a director for competition shows around the world. I wrapped and just aired a show that I directed called Making the Cut with Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn. It is a global fashion competition show. It's by Amazon Prime Video. And we went around the world with 12 designers competing on a $1 million prize to be the next global fashion brand. And it was an amazing experience. We went to Paris, we went to Japan, and I took massive risks in this show by shooting it in a completely different way than any other competition show out there. I decided that I want to make it look like a film, feel like a documentary
Hmm.
when it is a competition reality show. We filmed with cameras that has never been used in that type of show. We filmed with lenses that has never been used in that type of show, and I couldn't be more proud of my team and the product we have delivered. I love the show. I love the way it looks, and I'm sure you would love it too. You should go watch it. Not just but that's a what would you call it, a marketing, or what is the word for
Promo.
uh, yeah. Yes, a
which is
plug, I
which
believe.
is
Go
quite fine.
watch. Yeah.
Hey, I asked the question, so it's quite all right. And I've
Yeah.
worked with you. I've worked with you on a project, and so I've seen your work, and it's incredible. So I'm definitely going to,
Thank you.
encourage
Thank
people to actually do that. So, do you have any last words of wisdom for my risk management officers, chief risk officers out here who may not see the connection between Egyptology and risk management? But I'll give you the floor here.
Well, before that, there's also the other part of my life, the Egyptology part. I have done a project recently that is on air now, and you also should watch it. It's an interesting one. It only airs on treadmills. Notor Track, and anything that has iFit. It's a project by iFit. I went
Got it.
around Egypt, so you can walk. So since you're home anyway and you're exercising home anyway, you can be on the treadmill and watch me taking you around Egypt, inside pyramids, under sphinxes, and that was a lot of fun. Now, final words. There is no distinction between any different field when you're taking risks. Taking a risk when you're going in to discover a mummy for the first time is exactly the same risk you will take when you are trying to explore a new business to tackle, when you're trying to explore a company you're about to buy, when you're trying to completely pivot from your career to a different career. It is the same risk. It is still called risk. You can either lose it all or gain a massive, massive reward. One great advice that I've learned from a very good friend is that when you're about to take a risk, go study other risks that have been taken, not in your field, not in your business, in other places. You will be shocked what you can learn from someone that is just about to discover a mummy in your ice cream business.
There you go. I can't think of a better way to end our interview. That was fantastic. I appreciate you so much and appreciate your time spending it here with myself and my audience. So thank you so much.
Karen, thank you so much. This was awesome. Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank my audience for joining us today. I'm Dr. Karen Hardy. Thank you for checking in Flip This Risk, and I'll see you next time.